Luigi Mangione is a name that has been front and center in the news for the past week, and the reaction has been one of the most interesting manifestations of class consciousness that I would have ever expected to come out of modern American politics. We have a very glaring contrast in public reaction that's not really along the lines of the traditional left versus right reactions to an event like this. We have mainstream media outlets desperately defending Brian Thompson and aligning themselves with him in an effort to defend the rich.
Liberal wackos are treating suspected killer Luigi Mangione as a folk hero. First, by salivating over his Italian good looks.
There was no sign of any makeshift memorial on 54th Street. Instead, a poster was taped outside the Hilton Hotel depicting the suspect as a saint with the words, "Free Luigi." And there have also been sightings of wanted posters targeting other corporate executives in Midtown Manhattan, which I find rather despicable.
Which makes sense because liberal and conservative media alike are owned by the rich and have a vested interest in defending the rich in the simplest sense. CNN and Fox News alike are defending Brian Thompson and condemning Luigi Mangione in the same fashion. They're also both desperately trying to avoid any debate as to how the American healthcare system can be fixed to avoid something like this happening in the first place, or analyzing why Americans are frustrated with the American healthcare system. On the other hand, sentiment online by normal working class people is entirely different. Left and right wingers alike are like, damn, this dude's sexy. And both sides of the aisle are united in using this as an opportunity to express apathy for Brian Thompson's killing and express their frustration and hatred for the for-profit healthcare system. And very specifically, I want to analyze sentiments expressed by right-wingers. Right-wingers in the comment section of Ben Shapiro's latest videos.
The only way that you kill somebody like Brian Thompson is by suggesting that he is motivated not by a desire to keep the company working and operative in a very difficult regulatory environment with a bizarre system of subsidies and administrative details and all the rest of that. Instead, what you do is you say he's evil and he's just trying to maximize profit. Once you start saying the evil profiteers are trying to harm Americans, like that's their goal. Their goal is to harm, and I'm telling you, this is on both sides of the aisle. It is on the left predominantly, but there's a swath of people on the right who are also doing this routine. It's ugly.
Because there is a very specific sentiment I want to hold on to and unpack a little, which is that this is not a left versus right issue. This is an up versus down issue, which is correct, but I want to delve into this a little further. There are other comments saying corporate tools like you have to go. All you do is try to divide the working class. And your audience is waking up to the fact that your job is to spread wealth class propaganda. If you go and check out this video for yourself, you will see that the entirety of the comment section is flooded with this sentiment. These are not radical leftist anti-capitalists that are flooding his comment section. These are conservatives. This is Ben Shapiro's own fan base turning against him because in this instance, they are realizing how glaringly obvious it is that Ben Shapiro is defending the rich CEO of a healthcare company that is responsible for the highest denial rate of any healthcare company in the United States, which has verifiably led to thousands of deaths. Ben Shapiro is not advocating for his fan base or the loved ones of people in his fan base that may or may not have been affected by these denials or similar denials. And it is opening the eyes of his fan base because Ben Shapiro is running with the story that radical leftists are celebrating his death and other media outlets are attempting to paint Luigi Mangione as a leftist anti-capitalist, despite him actually being a moderate centrist with political views that are kind of all over the place, when in reality, everybody is entirely apathetic, and it transcends political boundaries. I want to hyper-focus on this sentiment. Not left versus right, it's up versus down. If you are a Republican or conservative or any type of right-winger, I want you to stick around to hear my case. Because if you have been a fan of conservative political commentators like Ben Shapiro and you are sharing these sentiments, you might feel a little duped by his wealth class propaganda. You might be reevaluating other things you have heard Ben Shapiro say, trying to use culture war politics in order to divide the working class and pit the working class against each other. And I want to try to make some of this make sense in a broader context to help you actually advocate for your best interest going forward. Because we have a completely skewed perspective on what left versus right means in contemporary American politics. So I'm going to explain to you what the Overton window is if you're not aware. The Overton window is essentially where in the political spectrum our acceptable politics lie, as in what is the range of our political parties and our government. So we have the liberal Democrats versus the conservative Republicans, which is our left flank and our right flank. However, our Overton window actually completely lies in the right wing of our full economic political spectrum. As Democrats are center-right, they are a capitalist party. They actively work in the interest of these large healthcare companies. Was Kamala Harris running on a platform of getting universal healthcare? No, she wasn't. Sure, the Democrats are more in favor of adding regulations to the healthcare industry, with the Affordable Care Act under Obama coming to mind, right? Stopping insurance companies from denying coverage on the basis of pre-existing conditions. But we have not had a Democratic candidate run on a platform of giving Americans universal health care. And that is for a reason, because it threatens the insurance companies that give money to the Democratic Party. They're corporate donors. It's partially why they made Bernie Sanders drop out in 2020, because he threatened the corporate donors. The Republican Party, in contrast, are just further right and don't even pretend to get close to offering universal health care. So that is our Overton window. We have center right versus far right. However, Democrats are classified as our left flank colloquially, despite not representing real left-wing economic policies. They represent moderate center right-wing policies, which are actually going further to the right every single election cycle. So with the lack of real left versus right economic policy, much of American politics is just the culture war. And the culture war serves one purpose, which is to distract you. And Democrats and Republicans, mostly Republicans alike, are guilty of using culture war issues to divide the working class. These are wedge issues, right? So think of the issue of trans people in sports. There are only like 30 trans athletes in college sports around the country, and assumedly only about half of them are playing in women's sports. So if you have found yourself really focused, invested, or worried about this issue, you have been duped and distracted. Whatever happens with the issue, if trans people are allowed to play sports, it is never going to affect you. It won't put more money in your pocket, and it won't drive the price of rent or groceries down, because that issue has been intentionally designed by right-wing media to distract you from the real problem, which is up versus down, rich versus poor. Wedge issues are designed to place a wedge in the working class and often have nothing to do with economics. Democrats and liberal media like CNN are also guilty of this same utilization of wedge issues to distract away from real issues. Kamala Harris undeniably lost the election because she abandoned the working class, among other reasons, and she had no significant economic policies that would help the working class in a meaningful way. And her small handful of good economic policies, like tackling grocery price gougers, was either abandoned or not adequately communicated, which ultimately failed to motivate voters to get off the couch and lost the election. However, liberal media outlets wanted to place the blame on trans people because they're trying to distract you in the same way.
Come on, this is crazy. Again, the trans ad to, the athletics. And by the way, as we've said on the show 1,000 times, Democrats should be smarter on the women's athletics thing. 85% of Americans oppose men transitioning after puberty and competing against women. And I'm not just saying this the day after the election. I've been saying this for years.
They said Kamala Harris is too woke. The Democrats talk about trans people too much, despite the fact that Kamala Harris only mentioned trans people once in her campaign, where she said that she would just follow the law.
Do you believe that transgender Americans should have access to gender-affirming care in this country?
I believe we should follow the law.
In regard to already in place legislation. So Democrats are blaming trans people for your problems. Republicans are blaming trans people for your problems. And while you fall for that, corporations like United Healthcare are running your pockets by collecting your monthly insurance payments and denying life-saving care when you need it. Democrats are painted as the far left, despite not actually being on the left at all. So with their establishment of business-as-usual politics and their absence of any really solid left-wing economic policy, Republicans are free to paint the Democrats in whatever way they see fit, which kind of comes into the whole, Kamala's for they, them ad.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens. Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
Things like that work because Democrats are so inconsistent that many of these ads are believable to a broader moderate base. Republicans can kind of paint them in any way that they want. Meanwhile, universal healthcare was not an option we could have voted for in the 2024 election. There were no ballot measures, and neither candidate even came close to pretending to offer it. And they don't offer it because these very same healthcare companies that serve as their corporate donors will stop funding them, partially because they would also cease to exist if healthcare was universalized. So yes, this is an up versus down issue. The problem is, right-wing politics is always held up by distracting the working class. And all of our establishment politics are right-wing politics, because left-wing politics is about up versus down. Depending on how right-wing you are, you might think that the radical left wants to forcibly turn all your children trans, kill everybody on U.S. soil who isn't Native American, and make straight marriage illegal, or some shit like that. What actual left-wing politics centers around is giving you more power as a worker, and a right to live a better life. The right to have free healthcare, the right to get a free education, the right to have benefits and security with your job, and a pension that can comfortably fund your retirement. Because left-wing politics fundamentally examines the role of rich CEOs like Brian Thompson and how they can use their power with near impunity to expand their profit margins. The goal of left-wing politics is to take this power away from people like Brian Thompson and put it back in your hands so that healthcare is not a for-profit industry, but an industry aimed at giving everybody healthcare for free. And this applies to more than just healthcare companies. Ideally, more power would be placed in workers' hands across the entirety of the working class. You probably have had some jobs that you hate doing, and you probably have had some bosses that you have hated. And part of that disdain probably comes from the fact that you feel like your boss can treat you however they want, and you have no say, you just have to take it. Because the alternative of taking it and quitting your job means that you won't be able to pay rent or afford groceries, or you'll lose your health care. And you probably feel ripped off. You have probably realized if you are selling a product or making a product as part of your job, you're getting a laughably tiny portion of the money that you know your boss is getting for just watching you make the product. Boss makes $1, I make a dime. And CEOs are able to siphon these profits out of you at any cost because they have dictatorial control over their companies. Workers have no say or vote on how to run things, and it is always in the CEO's best interest to pay you as little as humanly possible while you work for as many hours as you can. And it was Brian Thompson's MO to shape United Healthcare to deny as many Americans healthcare as they can get away with, killing thousands quietly while United Healthcare makes out with record profits, which has hurt you and has hurt your family and your loved ones. And you fundamentally understand this. Before this happened, I thought we were incredibly far away from having more widespread class consciousness, because America specifically has an entire culture built around intentionally stifling class conscious sentiment. Growing up, you probably have been told at every step that America is the land of opportunity and that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and become a billionaire just like, self-made Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, despite the fact that the vast majority of our billionaire class has inherited their wealth. And if you are part of the working class, your chance at experiencing any upward social mobility is being consistently eviscerated every year that goes by. Elon Musk inherited a fortune from an emerald mine, for Christ's sake. But if you identify with the billionaire class because you think it is possible that you can become a billionaire, even though it essentially isn't possible, you can be convinced to actively work against your own best interest as a worker. Because you feel like if you vote for billionaires to have less regulations, you will experience the fruits of that freedom one day, once you become rich. All the while, billionaires have been unraveling social spending that benefits you, plunging the working class further and further into poverty. And they can get away with it if you have been duped into blaming your problems on your neighbors instead of the billionaires. And many more industries are run in the same way as healthcare companies. Giant landlord conglomerates like BlackRock are using their immense wealth to buy up all the housing in the country, to constantly raise housing prices, raise rent prices, and cement all the generations to come as permanent renters that will never be able to afford their own house. So going forward, it is really important that you remember how this event has made you feel and hold on to this sentiment. And remember, every time you hear establishment media try to tell you that, undocumented immigrants are causing your problems, or trans people, or black people, et cetera, et cetera. Undocumented people are not the executives at BlackRock or United Healthcare. Just remember that it's always a distraction. And this story is not about condemning the violent act that Luigi Mangione did, despite the fact that Brian Thompson is responsible for more deaths than Mangione is. It is about how, in a system where regular people feel like they have no power or no say, it is far more likely that violent actions like this are going to happen out of frustration and suffering. So the only way to avoid it at a structural level is to give people free healthcare. And if you are a right-winger watching this, and I haven't been able to convince you to come a little further left, just remember to maintain this sense of class solidarity that you feel. Look out for your own interests by advocating for the interests of the working class, because it does seem like Luigi Mangione has played a bit of a role in uniting our ever increasingly divided population. And if classifying this issue as not left versus right, but up versus down keeps your eye on the ball, then keep thinking of it that way and join some local efforts and organize in your community to advocate for your best interest. Look into unionizing your workplace if you think that that is an avenue. And hell, you can even try to unionize your apartment building to bargain against your landlord raising rent or treating you unfairly by getting in contact with your city's local tenants union. Or you can look into mutual aid in your area to help provide for those in need or get much needed help if you are in need. And just keep your head down and put your best foot forward. All right, thank you for watching. Here's the outro music. This is a song I made called Elk Blood. Go check it out, please and thank you. Okay, bye-bye.